Join me as I show you how I save and invest the money from my budget for the month of March. In this video, I'm going to go into detail on exactly how much money I'm putting towards savings and growing an emergency fund, investing in stocks and shares through my pension, and also through my stocks and shares ISA. In this video, I'll go into detail on how I use all of those accounts, how much money I'm aiming to have in each one of those accounts, and how I'm building towards my goal of early retirement. By the end of this video, you'll have a handle on exactly where my money's going each month and what I'm putting it towards, and hopefully there'll be some really useful tips in there that you can take for yourself and apply to your own budget that might enable you to reach some of those financial goals that you have. But without delaying any further, let's get stuck in. Hello and welcome back to the channel. My name's Lewis, and here we talk about everything to do with personal finance, growing your money, and finance education. And as mentioned at the start, today we're going to go into a video that I do every single month, which showcases how much money I'm putting towards investments and how much money I'm putting towards savings, and ultimately what those goals are for all of those accounts that I have. I'm going to show all of through a spreadsheet that I have, my budget spreadsheet. I'm going to show all of those individual accounts, what their goals are for this year, what my target net worth is. And the reason I'm showing this is that hopefully by showing how you can plan out your finances, it might inspire some of you, the viewers, to go away and also pull together your own financial plans and work out what it is that you want to ultimately save towards. The plan of this video is not to showcase how much money I've got in any of my individual accounts personally. It's more to show you how my budgeting system works, in the hope that you might be able to take something from it that might help your system as well. But as I say, without delaying any further, what I'm going to do is put my budget spreadsheet up on the screen in a second. We'll do a quick overview for it for anyone that's not been here before, and then we'll dive into my to the tabs that we need for today's video. So let's get started. Okay, so on the screen now, you now have my monthly budget tracker, my full budget plan for exactly where my money goes, mapping it out depending on the money I've got coming in, the money I've got going out. Now, for anyone that has seen any of my videos before, and specifically seen any of my budgeting videos before, I do two monthly videos, this video that we're here now and a monthly budgeting video, and in that video I go into detail on exactly how much money I've got coming in from my salary and any side hustles, and then I break down exactly what that gets spent on through my monthly bills, my debt payments, effectively all of the 6 boxes that you can see at the top of this spreadsheet here on my budget overview. They are the boxes that I cover in that video. So if you want a bit more detail on exactly how this spreadsheet works from quite an intricate detail, I definitely suggest going back and watching that video. So I'll link that down in the description, because today we're not going to spend too much time going through exactly how the spreadsheet works. We're going to jump straight into the numbers that I'm putting towards my savings, investments, etc. that I mentioned at the start. So definitely go and check that video out if you want to see how this spreadsheet works in more detail. But just an overview, this is my budget overview tab that we've got on the screen here. And in this tab, effectively gives me a snapshot of exactly where my money's at. So as I mentioned, all of those sections at the top there, those 6 boxes at the top, they all cover effectively where my money gets split for each month. The one we're going to focus on today specifically, you can see there's a monthly savings and investments number there, which has already been allocated in my budget because I've already done my budget this month. So specifically that £750 is what we're going to talk about today and where that's going to. So we'll come on to that in a minute. But if I just scroll down as well on this page here, you can see I've got a wheel that shows the breakdown of where my money's going each month by percentage. Also a debt tracker, because I'm working on paying down some debt at the moment. Again, I cover that in more detail in that budget video. And then most importantly, there's 3 cells at the bottom here. So you've got my emergency fund, my pension investments total, and a net worth total. Now, the emergency fund total is accurate for the moment, and we'll come on to that in more detail in a second. And then the pension investments totals, as you can see, says 0, and my net worth is 4,600, which may not seem like a lot with everything I've got going on in here. Reason being is we need to input the numbers into my spreadsheet from last month as to how my savings and investments performed, to be able to accurately see the net worth number and pension investments totals. So I'm just mentioning that now because we'll come back to these boxes at the end of the video, and those numbers will have significantly changed when we've updated the tab. So just a note there that those 2 numbers effectively is what we will come back to see the overall snapshot of where I'm at. But without delaying any further on the actual numbers that we need to input, let's go into the savings and investments tab, which you can see down the bottom here. And then if I just move that back towards the top there. So as you can see on this tab, and I'll actually zoom in because I know there was a couple of bits of feedback from the last video I did that this was a little bit zoomed out. So I'll move in and scroll across. So I have 3 boxes here, 3 things that effectively I'm working towards to be able to enhance my future, with the ultimate goal of being able to retire early as well. So I have an emergency fund that I'm currently saving for, which we'll come back to in more detail in a moment. I have my pension, which is my workplace pension through my current employer. That's a salary sacrifice scheme, so I'll go into detail on how much money is in that as well, and how much money goes into that from myself every month, how much gets contributed towards it. And then finally, if we scroll all the way over here, we've also got an investments account, a stocks and shares ISA that I have as well. And I use that account because my intention is to retire early, and ideally retire by 55. That's my current plan. All of my pensions that I'm saving into, I'm only able to access from the age of 57. So I'm building a separate stocks and shares ISA investment account to be able to provide me with money to take me from the age of 55 to the age of 57 without having to draw on. Obviously I can't draw on any pension, so it's to provide me with that lump sum of money to take me across that bridge. So this account in particular is very much in its infancy at the moment, but I'll cover how much money is going into that shortly as well. But they are my 3 main accounts that I've got. So they're the 3 things that we're going to cover in today's video. So if we start with my emergency fund, and I'll scroll down so you can see a bit more of it in the box there. So my emergency fund, and emergency funds in general, I would argue one of the most important things you can have in your finance system. And I realised probably about a year ago now that I had some money in cash savings, but I wasn't really using it for any purpose. It kind of just sat there. I dipped in and out of it whenever I sort of needed to, without allocating that money for a purpose. And having done lots more research and really got into finance content like I have over the last few months or so, I decided to turn that money that I had and build it as an emergency fund. So that's the process that I'm going through at the moment. So if I scroll down slightly, you can see that I have a goal down here of £7,000. That's where I'm looking to get to this year for my emergency fund. If we go back to the budget overview tab and we scroll up to the top, you'll see here my monthly bills number that comes in there is about, for this month, is £1,600, and that's a fraction higher than it normally would be due to a couple of one-off costs. So that number for me normally is about £1,500. That monthly bills box there is really important because effectively that summarises all of my essential costs that I have every single month. So everything that I have to pay for, all of the bills, mortgage payments, those types of things, that's what's included in there. So that is my baseline cost that I need to be able to cover every single month, just to be able to not accrue debt effectively. So what I'm working towards is an emergency fund that sits between 4 and 6 months of that number saved up, so that if I were to lose my job for any reason or anything dramatic was to happen, I have some money that is able to tide me through. So that's why I'm working towards getting myself a £7,000 emergency fund saved, which you can see down the bottom here, because that will actually give me, what will that give me? Just over 4 months worth of savings stashed up, so that if anything were to happen, I've got that there. And then in 2027 I will look to probably extend that further and get that up to 6 months, but 4 months is a really good safety net to start with. So that's what I'm aiming towards, and I'm really proud to say that I'm getting really close to that already. We're very early in the year, so this is March, and I'm already having a really good run at this. So I'm hoping that I'll be able to get that emergency fund saved really soon. So if you look at the individual boxes here, what I do is at the start of every month, I take the total that I was on from the last month and drop it down to this line here. And then I add in how much money I'm putting into my emergency fund for the month. It will give me a total at the end there. And then also, if I have any interest paid in that month, I can also put it in there. I know that there's no interest being paid this month on this account, so I can just drop 0 in there now. So straight away, we know that that box is ticked off. So all that's left to fill in for the emergency fund is how much money I'm putting in this month. If we go over to my monthly budget tracker, which this is the tab that I mentioned that I go into more detail on my monthly budgeting video, so do go and check that out if you want to see it in more detail. But if we scroll down here, you can see I have a line allocated for emergency fund, and in that emergency fund I'm adding £500 into it for this month. So I can go back to the savings and investments tab here, and I can pop £500 in there like that and hit enter, and you'll see that the cumulative total goes up to 6,420. So that's what I've now got in my emergency fund. You can see that that pulls through down the bottom here, and what that means is I've got £580 left to go to reach my goal of my emergency fund this month. So I'm really delighted to say that I think probably if I can continue in next month, which I think I should be able to, another £500 by the end of April, I will have saved up this emergency fund, and I can start using that money. Either I can continue to build my emergency fund if I wanted to, or I can move that money across to some of the other things in my financial system. So really happy with that's going. But that's an overview of my emergency fund and what I'm looking to achieve with that. So the next section that we're going to move on to is now the investment side, the growing my money side of my finances. So as mentioned, we've got two boxes here that we're going to cover. First of all, it's my pension, and then we're going to cover my stocks and shares ISA that I've also got as well. If we start with my pension here, so this is where this spreadsheet gets slightly more intricate and intuitive in terms of how it fills bits and pieces in for us. So in this section here, you can see for the months that I filled in previously, what I do is I fill in the total amount of money I've got put into my pension at the start of the month, and then I add in how much I'm contributing to my pension through my salary sacrifice. So I have a matched pension scheme with my employer. When I say matched pension scheme, what I mean is that they match up to a certain amount of contributions that I make as a percentage of my salary. So mine is 6% with my employer. So if I put 6% of my salary into this scheme, they will match it and also put 6% in. That is effectively free money that goes into your pension. So looking and researching what your employer's pension scheme is and how much they will match your contributions is a cornerstone of any financial kind of plan and financial growth. So if you've not looked into that and you're seeing this on today's video, if there's one thing you take away, definitely go and explore that with your employer and find out what the details are of their pension scheme and how much money you could actually be getting from them for free. I've done a whole separate video on exactly how to get control of your pensions as well, so I'll link that down in the description. And if you want a bit more detail on how I've managed to get all my pensions under control and how you can do the same yourself, then that video's worth checking out. But going back to this spreadsheet and how this works, so as I say, I put my cumulative total for my pensions in there for the start of the month. I then put in how much I'm adding to my pensions, and then when I get to the end of the month, so when I come to film this video, I then put the number that my pension finished on for the month, and it will tell me in this box how much it grew. So I know that my pension for this month finished on £33,416.33. So let's put that in there. And you see I hit enter, and it automatically fills in the growth number for me. So that growth number goes to £928.15. So that's how much my pensions grew last month. Now that's quite a substantial amount of money. That's probably one of the biggest months of growth that I've seen, certainly since I've been tracking this more closely. So a really, really good month. There were many reasons for that, economical reasons, global reasons in particular. All of my pensions and my stocks and shares ISA invested in wider global funds. So they take in the global stock market, effectively some of the biggest companies from across the globe. So due to various economic factors last month, it was a good month for growth. So as you can see, they've grown by £928 there. One thing I should have mentioned at the start is with these pensions is you can see I started the month of February with £31,918 saved in my pension. That comes from two separate pensions. So I have my workplace pension, which accounts for just over half of this, about 18,000 of this is in my current workplace pension. And that's where the £570 that I add every month goes into. So that goes straight into my workplace pension. I also have a SIP, a self-invested personal pension, and that account is accumulation of all of the previous pensions that I had from all of my other employers that I've banded together all into one pot, so I've got more control over it. And again, it's another thing I definitely recommend looking into. It's not always the best thing to do depending on your previous employer's pension schemes. It might be that if it was a really good pension scheme that your money was invested into, but for more control and more visibility, I personally found it beneficial to bring all my pensions together in one account. So that's what I've done. So the rest of the money is in that self-invested personal pension. I'm not putting any money into that pension at the moment. That's just sat there as accumulation of all of my old pensions. So yeah, that's where that number comes from, and then that's how much money I invested into the pension through my salary sacrifice in the month of February. That's the final total I ended up with by adding the two numbers together that are in my account, and therefore it tells me that my money grew by £928. So as I say, a really strong month for growth, due to other various economic factors, which I'm sure you're aware of going on in the world world at the moment. I'm expecting March to not probably be as good with my pensions and my investments. So it'll be interesting to see what those numbers churn out when we come back to it, and how much of that £928 I grew disappears again next month. So I'm certainly expecting it to be a challenging month, the month of March. But I will refilm this video at the start of April, and we'll come back and we'll see how they performed. But what I can do is just pull that number down, 3341633, into the start of March, because I know that's what I'm starting the month on. And I also know that I'm going to invest £570.18, because that's already been taken out of my salary. So let's pop that in there as well. So then all that's left is for us to fill in the end total, and then that will give us a growth number there for the month of March. So we'll come back at the start of April and we'll see how we did. And if I scroll down to the bottom, you can see I've also got some targets here, as I had with my emergency fund. So my goal for this account, or my pension, is to get them to £37,000 this year, and that leaves me £3,000 left to go, because as you can see, I'm on 33,986 there at the moment. And so far this year, my account's grown by 2%. For my retirement plan, which I'll touch upon at the end of the video, I'm looking for roughly about 7% growth a year to be able to stay on track for retiring at 55, as I mentioned. So the fact that we are 3 months into the year, 2 full months and a little bit into the year, and we've grown by 2% so far, that's a pretty good start. As I say, that number might go backwards in the month of March, and possibly for over the next couple of months, depending on what goes on in the world. But at the moment, I would say that we're on track for that 7%, which is great news. So that's my pensions. And then effectively the same system again applies for my savings and investments account as well. So we've got the same situation here. You can see at the start of February, I had 4,435 in my stocks and shares ISA. I add £150 a month to that at the moment. I'll be looking to up that soon, but at the moment, and for this month as well, it's £150. And then what we need to do is put that end total in for my stocks and shares ISA to tell me how much that grew for the month of February, or for the month of February as well. So I know that account ended on 468141. So let me pop that number in there. And then, as you can see, that account grew by £96.41 last month. So nowhere near the same levels as what my investment account grew, but obviously a much smaller amount of money invested in here. So the kind of compounding effect is not as huge as what it is in the pension account, where I've got a lot more money. But as mentioned, this account is not there to be the same size as my pension. It's there to effectively provide me with a couple of years' salary, or virtual salary, for when I hope to retire at the age of 55, that can get me across to 57 for then when I can start drawing down on my pension. So all told, pretty happy with how that account's doing as well. And I can do exactly the same as we've done in the pensions account, where I can drop that 4681.41 down there. And then I can add in that I know there's going to be £150 go into that account again this month. And then we can just wait. We can pop 0. We'll leave that cell blank actually. And we can wait until next month to see what that looks like. And again, if there's any significant ups or downs. If we go down to the target for this account, I've got a target of £6,000 that I want to achieve in this account by the end of the year. And currently on that 4831.41 total. So I've still got just over £1,000 left to go, but obviously contributing £150 a month. Hopefully that's going to do most of the heavy lifting on that account anyway, before we even factor in the growth. So yeah, I'd say pretty happy with where that account is. That is as well. In terms of this account, it's important to note, just a side piece as well, that I mentioned before, it's a stocks and shares ISA. So what that means is anything up to £20,000 in terms of contributions, growth, dividends that get paid back into the account from the companies I'm invested in, I don't pay tax on that. So that's the really important and bonus factor of this ISA really. So that's why I use it. I'm taxed on the money that goes into here. I have already paid tax on, unlike my pension, which gets taken out before tax. This money is coming through to actually into my bank account, so it's already been taxed, and then I decide to take that money out and put it into this account, which obviously then means it doesn't get taxed any further on any gains that it develops, as long as those gains are under £20,000. And something pretty crazy would need to happen to this account for it to grow £20,000 in a tax year, given the size of money that's in there. So I'm not expecting that to be happening anytime soon. So I probably won't be getting near that threshold. Certainly this tax year is obviously about to come to an end, and I'm not expecting to be near that threshold in the next tax year anyway. So that's a real bonus of using a stocks and shares ISA. So again, if you're watching this video and you want to get started with investing in stocks and shares, one, I've got a video that covers it in more detail, so I'll link it down in the description so you can kind of find your feet with it and work out how you want to get started. And yeah, two, it's a really beneficial way of getting started because it keeps all of your gains, everything that you make, tax free. So they are my 3 accounts effectively that I manage for growing my money for the future. So that's how they all work. And then you can see I've got some pie charts just at the bottom here that just show how much I've saved, how much I've still got to save. So you can see I'm doing fairly well, and the emergency fund and the pension tracker looking really good. And then the investment tracker's just got that little bit more money to go. But overall, really happy with where my savings and investments are for the month, which is great. So the only other thing that is worth me covering on today's video, I've covered it a couple of times before, and I'll cover it again, particularly for anyone that's new here, but also this spreadsheet, you'll see when I go onto it in a moment, is a really minuscule spreadsheet. So I'm going to zoom in on a little bit more detail just to provide an overview for people on how I've mapped out my retirement. Now, as you can see, I've changed the tab here and it's really small. I'll zoom in on it in a second. But just before I do zoom in on it, I think it's important to say that this is not a exact science, this spreadsheet. I've kind of made a couple of assumptions. I've sort of rounded a few bits here and there in terms of when the growth number is applied and things like that, just to give me effectively a structure towards my planned retirement. So it's not, as I say, it's not exact, it's not spot on the money, but what it does is give me some kind of guide rails to be able to use to understand whether I'm on track to hit that early retirement. So this is the spreadsheet as a whole, and what it does is before I zoom in, I'll just explain what it does while it's zoomed out here. This tracks my monthly contributions into my investment accounts, so that's my pension and that's my stocks and shares ISA. It tracks the amount of money that I need to be investing every single month to be able to reach my goal of early retirement. And then at the end, so it goes from January to December across the top with the numbers that I input every single month. And then at the end, we assume a 7% growth number that goes on top of that number. So that's how much then I'm hoping and planning for my money to grow every single year. And then at the end, that gives me what my projected total should be, assuming that I invest those amount of money and I get that 7% growth. That's what it's mapped towards. Obviously, it won't always work out like that, depending. Some years I won't get 7% growth. Some years I might only get 1%, 2%, might even get negative growth. And other years I might get 20% growth, like a couple of the years that have just been in the stock market. So it will very much ebb and flow. It won't be exact, but this will allow me to track whether I look like I'm roughly on track to hit that goal of mine of early retirement. So then it takes the number and it drops it down to the next line. So this is where I'll zoom in. Probably at this point, it's probably a bit more helpful. So hopefully this is a little bit clearer. I don't want to zoom in too far because otherwise it takes out the context of the spreadsheet as a whole. But so you can see just an example of how this works. So at the start of the year, I started on 35,884 in my pension accounts. That was the stocks and shares ISA and my 2 pension accounts that I've got. And then here is the contributions that I make every single month. So there's 2 here that are highlighted in green because I've already made those. So £709 went in January and £709 went in February. That is because that combines the money that went in from my salary sacrifice from my job, and then also the money that I'm contributing myself into my investment account. So it was £559 for my pension and £150 going into my stocks and shares ISA. My pension, as you'll have seen, has increased slightly, contributions recently, just because I've had a slight uplift in salary just through an inflationary increase. So that, by extension, more money is going into my pension. So for the month of March, £720 was going into those accounts. So I can change that to green now as well. Wrong shade of green. Let me change that to that green there. So I know that that money's gone in, and then what I will continue to do is contribute these amounts of money that you see here. So I've got another month of 720 in April that will follow this month, and then I move up to 800. Now, the reason I've upped it from that point is that I should have completed the savings for my emergency fund by then. So that money will hopefully be freed up in my finance system. So I'm planning to take a little bit more of it and put it towards my investment totals. So then if I continue to invest £800 for the rest of the year, and I assume that I get a 7% growth, which you can see there would be £4,000 on those accounts, that will leave me with a total of £48,194.73 at the end of the year. And then that number would come down. So if we go back over here, you can see the 48,194.73 drops down to the start of 2027, and then so on the contributions continue all the way through the year. You can see another year of £800. Then I'd expect it to grow by 5,490 if I got the 7% growth. And it would leave me with 61,840 at the end of the year, which is the combination of all the contributions, the money I started with, all the contributions, and the growth. So this is how this spreadsheet works. As you can see, if I then go down this column, so column Q that we're in now, the numbers start to get really big as we get down the bottom here. And then I've put in, I actually need to adjust this slightly, but I've put in a planned semi-retirement initially of 2050, and at that point there I would be 57, but I'm looking obviously to bring that back a couple of years. And by that point, if we let me go back up here, and if we look at column O, that's the money that the column O is the amount of money that I'm earning off of my investments every year. You can see that with my salary being about £50,000, which is at the moment, as mentioned earlier and in my budgeting video, I actually will reach that target, as in my investments will be earning that for me in the year 2046. So I'll actually be 53 at that point. So current projection to basically live the life I live at the moment, but be able to live it off of growth from my investments, I'm currently on track to do that in 2046. So crazy spreadsheet, lots of information in there. It's something that works for me. I understand it might not work for you, or might not be something that you're interested in, but if this is something that you're interested in, I make this spreadsheet available, not as an editable link, but I'll drop a link to it in the description, just so from a view perspective, so you can go in and you can have a look at this tab in more detail and just see some of the formatting and bits and pieces, and see if it's something that you're interested in yourself. At some point I will create some versions of this as well that are fully formatted, that I'll probably pop available for people to be able to purchase for a very small amount of money, just because obviously it takes a bit of time for me to put the work in to build the spreadsheet and get it all formatted correctly. But yeah, it's probably something I'll look to make online and available for people in the not too distant future. But yeah, so that's the overall summary of how that all works as well. And then the only other thing to touch upon is just going back to my budget overview tab. We're a little bit too far zoomed in now, so let me zoom back out a little bit for this one. And then we'll go back down to these two cells at the bottom, or three cells at the bottom here that I mentioned. So as you can see, the numbers have now changed. So the emergency fund has gone up to 6420, which pulls through from that other spreadsheet. My pensions now have the right amount of money in there, so it was 0 when we started the video on this spreadsheet. It's now on 38,817, which is the number pulled through from my investment account and my pensions account, which means that I actually have a net worth of £43,923. And my goal for this year was to get that net worth to £50,000. So I would say at the moment I'm fairly on track to do that. Obviously, depending on how the stock market performs over the next couple of months in particular, might mean that might not be as possible as it looked at the start of the year. But yeah, overall, I would say pretty happy with where it's at. So that is a whistle-stop tour and summary of how my savings and investments work, where I put my money, and how what I'm looking to grow it for, and what my goals are. So hopefully, yes, some useful information in there that can help you plan out your own finances as well. And there you have it. That is how I'm mapping out my savings and investments for the month of March. Hopefully there was some useful information in there for you, and particularly showcasing how my spreadsheet works and how you yourself can pull together a plan for whether it be early retirement or whether it be some completely different financial goal, saving for a house deposit, whatever it is that is your financial goal. Hopefully there's some useful information in there and tips on how to budget and how to plan for it that will allow you to achieve those goals. As I say, I do this video every month, so please do, if you liked this content and you enjoyed it, first of all, give this video a like. Drop down a comment if you've got any suggestions for the spreadsheet, any changes, or you want to know any more information. And if you want to know when the next round of this video goes live so you can see how my investments performed over the last month, then make sure you subscribe to the channel, because then you'll get a notification of when my next video goes live. But other than that, that's it from me today. Hopefully that was a really useful video for you. And yeah, I look forward to seeing you in the next one.